I am unashamed. What about you?
We were talking about Christine on the Duck Call Room podcast. Has been a big favorite, and one of the things that Jase loved about it was that Christine was Si's fact checker. Well, in our case, on Unashamed, that's why we bring Missy in as the Jase fact checker. So, Missy, welcome back to Unashamed. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm actually going to confess that I haven't watched. I've never watched, but I haven't listened in a long time because I just can't handle it. Can't handle it anymore.
Well, this is
good to have support from your own family.
Starting well.
Because you hear so
I
many
can't
inaccurate
listen to
things.
the stories. I'm like, I
Hey.
don't know when, where, or who that happened to, but it wasn't about us.
Yeah, the
Right.
thing is
So
a
you
hit.
understand there's
Yeah,
some-
I've never watched it.
Here's what you got to remember.
And this is what I get every time I question him. Right here, the speech he's about to give.
Oh,
Go ahead, come on.
Go ahead,
lay the speech.
Let's hear
I'm
the
really
speech.
enjoying this. I think we need Missy as a part of the permanent cast.
Oh, I do too.
This is good.
Jase squirms every time.
When
she's
something is based on a true
Oh,
story
boy.
and you're dealing with older or aging men, there
Missy,
is.
you remember the years. You remember the years we were just getting. I
Get
was
used to
hearing,
that.
Missy, I was just hearing little bits and pieces of it. But when Jase was courting you, there seemed to have been a pretty good stance among your family group, your dad and mother, like, don't do it. Don't mess with that old guy.
What I was going to say before I was interrupted is the margin of error becomes greater. You ever thought about that phrase, margin of error? Why do they do that in polling? Why do they do it?
But polling is, what is it, 2 to 4% margin of error?
I think I have a storytelling margin of error of 2 to 4%.
I'm going to plead the fifth on that.
You put that number a little higher. It's like Si saying that 5% of his stories are,
Like 95% true.
Well,
yeah, 95%.
But you got to remember, Si's telling stories that are beyond the atomic and molecular structure of our Earth. It defies laws of nature, and I mean, when you start getting to going down that road, you're no longer.
Are you
telling a
saying you
story.
couldn't run fast enough for your tennis shoes to catch on fire? Is that what you're saying?
Thank you. Well, what's funny is that Christine, during the episode, which it was funny, I mean, it was hilarious. She didn't seem to have any animosity toward him. She would just say, no. Just little things. He said, we found out Christine was pregnant because she was sick, and, we had eaten a big pot of spaghetti that night, and she went, tacos. That's the way it was. It was just
The powers that be, when they asked me, well, what about your brother? What's your take on him, Si? I said, just hyper blowing smoke. And they said, no, you missed it, Mr. Robertson. It's called talent. So I thought, talent? I said, I never thought about that as being talent for my little brother, but that's what they informed me.
He is well loved by America. That's
very
But he really wasn't as extreme until he started getting payments, checks in the mail
That's right.
for being in front of a camera. And then he just went crazy.
Yeah.
Like crazier than normal.
The
What
only
most
thing
people
that
don't realize is he acts the same way when he's not being filmed. It's like the camera's
Yeah.
on him all the time.
Right.
I said, Si, you're not on camera. Go ahead and just...
the only thing that worries me about it is that Si is your uncle and you're named after him, and you kind of have that tendency. But what could calm
May
down
not
it?
be side, but he has side tendencies.
What is the
What-
tendency? Is it
The
insanity?
2 to 4% margin of error. But
Well, you don't
then
agree with that?
add in the fact that another gene pool from your mom is also in your bloodstream.
Oh, man.
What does that mean?
That means
Your mom-
60% exaggeration on every story
Your
told.
mom and
That's-
Si do not share the same blood. So you've come from both of those bloodlines. So that's a little.
It's like yesterday.
Which is
Scary to
120.
me.
That's
What we're
120%
going to name him?
exaggeration.
Miss Kay's having that baby. What are you going to name him? I'm out in the river baiting a trot line. I turned around. I said, I don't care. Name him after you. He just, he took off, and he did. He says,
See,
"Name him
most
after
people
me."
are thinking, why didn't you leave?
Yeah, he was too busy fishing.
Disturbing. Well, is this how it's going to go? Or
This is pretty much the whole podcast. We've only got 43 more minutes of this.
Yeah.
So I was going to mention, Zach, that because y'all were talking before we came on camera about who was Layla at your house? Who was at your house?
Oh yeah, last night. Which she's always welcome. She's like Forrest Gump. She just shows up like everywhere, and so she texts me
That's not
like,
just her. That's all the Dasher kids.
well, Mia's a lot like that too, because I think Mia's shown up at the Dasher's house quite a few times too, in North Carolina.
With COVID.
Wait,
She brought
what?
COVID to the Dasher family. Oh, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, did.
That's the gift
Yeah.
that keeps on giving, Zach.
I hadn't even heard these stories. But last night I saw Mia. I hadn't seen her in a week because she's been in Washington, D.C. So I was like, hey, how are you? Well, then I turned around. There was two of her friends there. So that one of them had been in Alaska, and I was talking. Well, then I just I didn't see Layla come in. I just turned around. I was like, what are you doing here? I mean,
Well, Layla came down from Mia's bed because she came over and she just said she's in town. Aunt Missy, I'm in town. Can I come spend the night? I was like, sure. So I texted Mia and said, be quiet when you come in because Layla's going to be in your bed. And she said, move her to Karina's room. I'm tired. So I had to go up there, tell Layla to move over to Karina's room because Mia's going to come in
Speaking of
late.
genetics, speaking of genetic influence, yeah, she's
well,
definitely
it'd be
Robertson.
weird though if
Sure.
you walked into your room and there's somebody in your bed when there was another bed right down the way. You would
Well,
say,
but they're
hey,
close, and Layla wanted to sleep
They're
with
close.
Mia.
They're
and-
family.
And then
You
Layla
gotta-
said,
you
that's
gotta
probably good
serve.
because I have to leave at 6 a.m. So this morning I heard the door shut. So
I heard
she
it
had
too.
left.
Tell
So
her when she leaves and everyone's asleep, you can shut the door quietly. I heard a wham. I was like, well, let me get up.
And look, so we were going to Europe, and so we get home, and I found something of Bear Dashers in almost every room in my house.
Oh.
So I said, well, I guess Bear was here at some point while I was gone. Because now the strange thing was, for the first time ever, I didn't find anything broken in my house. Because usually, when some of the Dashers come through, I'll find little knickknacks and stuff. Like they'll be put back like they're together, and you reach to grab it, and it just falls into 6 pieces. And it's like, have the Dashers been here? Because I
think the term is you got dashered. That's the term that all of our
That's
friends
exactly
use.
what it is.
You got
well, what
dashered.
Gordon used to say is he had to bear proof his house.
Yeah.
So I remember
Yeah,
that.
Bear-
What do you
Bear's
think?
interesting.
Zach, when you name a kid Bear, what do you think's going to happen? I mean, that's something.
That
I
was
love
Jill.
Bear. I'm
That
sorry.
was all.
Oh, I
I'm
love
a
Bear. I'm
fan.
just saying, don't when you name. It's like one of my friends named Bull, and he acts like a bull, and people are like, man, I can't believe he did that. It's like his name is Bull. What do you think he was gonna do? He's gonna try to run through the wall at every chance.
I always tell Bear, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly, and he is. So, Zach, yesterday,
Yeah,
you
he
appreciate this. I was talking to his Bible teacher from camp last week, and I said, what about, how was I having a Dasher in your house? He said, oh, man, I'll tell you what. He said that they were discussing the resurrection, and so some of the kids in the cabin were saying, yeah, well, it's not a physical resurrection, it's a spiritual resurrection. And I mean, here goes Bear. No, it's the body. I mean, it's coming out of the ground. He goes into his whole deal. So the Bible teacher is listening. He's just listening to the debate. And then finally he said, well, let's see what the Bible says about it. So he goes over to read 1 Corinthians 15, and he said, the body is sown in dishonor. The body. And he said, Bear looked at him and said, so I was right? I said, now that's a Dasher. He was full board on it, but he wasn't really sure whether he was right or not. But you could
That
have
happened
never
the
known.
last podcast. I mean, seemingly Zach and I were arguing the whole time. We get behind the paywall for you who are not paying, and then Zach said, "Yeah, basically, I agree with Jase." I'm like,
Y'all love to
Well,
argue.
you know-
I'm not sure that's a Dasher thing. That's a
Well,
Robertson
it's
trait
it's
carried
both.
down
Yeah,
through the
I'm not big
Dashers.
into arguing. I
Oh,
like to listen
please.
But it is a common complaint on the podcast that they say Jase and Zach are arguing, but they're not talking about. They're saying the same thing, but they just like to argue. Which there may be some truth to that.
You ought to hear it because Jase has Zach on speaker a lot at the house whenever you call Zach. So I hear all this live too. This is not just on the podcast. This is live. Look, your sister Melissa and Jase would wake me up in the middle of the night because she lived with us, arguing. Like voices were escalating.
Arguing sounds. We weren't arguing. I think you deemed that.
All I know is when I'm woken up and there's a baby down the hall, I open the door and I'm like, y'all need to take it down or whoever wakes up that baby is going to feed that baby.
That's called passionate discussions.
Well,
exactly
just
How you learn, you know.
And the audience may not know this. So I'll give you a little bit of inside workings of our brain trust here. So Zach is the unique person in our family. He's our first cousin, obviously, but he has business dealings with all of us in a different arena. And he's the common denominator. When he and I are partners in a company, he does stuff for Dad. He and Jase do stuff with you guys in your show, and then he does stuff with Missy with Will and Corey. So Zach, you're kind of the chameleon. You're the man who can get things done. But it's interesting because you kind of work with us all at individual level. How would you describe that working with so many Robertsons?
I don't know. It's a weird. I don't know. I've asked myself that question. How did I end up in that position? I don't know because I do argue a lot. I mean, mainly with Willie and Jase. I mean, like that. Those two relationships are like had this historical. I don't know. I think I get along with the.
I have an opinion on it. My opinion is that because of what happened with the rise in fame, our circle gets really small because we can't trust a whole lot of people.
That's
and we've
true.
learned that in the last 10 years. And Zach is very trustworthy.
Yep.
He might drive us all crazy at some points, but he is very trustworthy. He is kingdom focused. He is God-centered, and he loves our family. And so that's why you're dealing with all of us at the same time.
That's very,
My
very
favorite
kind.
moment in
Great
that.
tape, man. That's why we have Missy on this podcast.
My favorite moment is me and Zach. We were arguing at this time. I mean, voices were raised. He was getting upset. I was a little angry. We were arguing. I forgot what we were arguing about. But and he just hung up on me. I was like, what? Are we back in junior?
I think you've done that to him too. Am I right about that, Zach?
Y'all were trained.
I mean, this wasn't years ago, Phil. This was like a few weeks ago.
I know.
And look,
That's what we're
Going
kids.
back to your training, the word was if you want to make a point and you want to raise your voice, that's in. If you want to elevate your voices, that's fine. I said, but always remember, if it comes to blows, if it comes to blows, that's when I step in.
Well, we didn't,
I said, I won't step in,
come to
make a
blows.
point, you raise your voice, fine, no problem, but it must not come to blows.
So we can't come to blows. That's
what's
still our
funny.
line.
Here's what's funny is, so he hangs up on me. 3 or 4 days later, it turned out in this case that I happened to be right.
Oh boy.
Of
Just in
course
this
it
case.
did.
He calls and he's like, well, you were right on that. And just went on like, I was like, well,
the
wait
hang-up
a
never
minute.
happened.
I wanted to linger there.
That may be, hey, Missy, that might be one of those embellished stories.
Oh, here we go.
think
Is
he's-
that
I
in a
think he's taking
2%,
some
2 to
liberty
4% margin of error? Is that what you're saying,
Oh,
Zach?
goodness.
And then let's don't
Well,
forget.
my dad always says that with the Robertson, he said if you debate them, they'll never admit that you were right. What they'll do is they'll come back 3 months later and take your idea and call it their own. Hey, you know what I figured out?
No, I told him
I
that.
think that's
I told him that. And he was like, really? And then he saw it happen and he's like, yeah. I was like, you're never going to win an argument.
So see, this is Jase's idea. See, just this exact statement. This was your idea.
See,
you
he's
just took
proving
credit.
my
You know where I
point
got
rather
that
than-
from? You know where I get this from? Do you know who invented wearing a white T-shirt and rolling things up to your shoulder?
Happy Days.
Phil Robertson.
yeah. I was thinking
He told me that. He told me that when I was a kid. He came in. I was a kid.
I'm thinking
Still wearing the white
Fonz.
T-shirt.
And he had some snuff or something rolled up in his shirt. And I was like, huh, that's pretty clever. And he's like, I invented this.
And just think, Dad, now the only thing rolled up in there is your bicep.
You know,
So
you
that's-
never know all these little nuggets that are introduced in young lives.
Well, as a kid, I remember when I thought, my dad invented
the roll-up T-shirt.
the roll-up white T-shirt. Because then I went to school and told my friends,
Oh gosh.
like when you see Happy Days or other things,
That was my dad.
my dad invented that concept. I did share that at school.
Well, maybe we've undercut Dad's embellishment into this whole conversation. Let's take a break. Missy, did you know that 2 out of 3 guys experience hair loss before they're 35?
I have not personally seen that in this family, so I cannot attest
We do
to
think
that.
it's kind of funny that our oldest and longest running sponsor is a company called Keeps, and we're the hairiest people you've ever met. But a lot of guys out there, 2 out of 3, lose their hair before they're 35. And so we want to try to help flip those odds to save as much hair as possible. And that's what Keeps does. They're a clinically proven, FDA-approved hair treatment. It's available online, so you don't have to go to a pharmacy in a waiting room somewhere. They've got a physician online that's going to make sure the product is safe for you, and it's about half the cost, and it comes straight to your house. So if you have any questions, you can message your Keeps doctor 24/7. So if you're having some issues and losing that hair, go to keeps.com. You're going to get 50% off your first order, which is a great deal. KEEPS.com/door. That's keeps.com/door. Well, before we leave the subject, I do want to say that one of the best quality that Zach brought into all of our family was that he married Jill. So she's a great part
I
of
think
the
I'd
equation.
rephrase that she somehow or another found it in her heart to agree and go along with
To
that.
marry Zach.
Yeah.
That's true. All right. So, Missy, we got you on the show. I want to, because we've been telling some stories, but I want to hear.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, exactly. So, we want to hear kind of what's going on. So, Jase mentioned, I think a couple of podcasts ago, about Karina graduating. And I know that's been a big deal. So, tell the audience a little bit about.
So is she in D.C. now?
Yeah,
She's in DC.
what's going on?
So Mia was there for a week. She had won a contest, which actually was pretty. I think it's very honorable for her to do it. But she wrote a history essay in an English class, and there were 2 winners per state. And she was one of the winners when she was in the 10th grade, and that was right before COVID hit. And when the winners get an all-expense-paid week in Washington, D.C., where they have to wear kind of business casual clothes, and they tour the Capitol, and they get to speak to Congress and all of these different things. And so she finally got to go this year. Well, it happened to be piggybacked right before Karina was moving into her new apartment and starting her new job. And so we kind of made a girls' weekend out of it. So we moved Karina in to an apartment in Arlington, Virginia, actually. It's a little bit safer neighborhood than Washington, D.C. And
She works in D.C.
because she works in D.C., so we had to figure all that out. And she doesn't drive. We kind of laughed about that. I said, sweetheart, you can't even drive a Target cart. So don't even, and she knows it. I'm like, you do not know what shopping cart etiquette is.
Did this seem to be a conservative group that she's working for?
I have no idea. It's a large economics
That's
firm.
the scary part.
It's scary, but
she's like a math analytical, or I guess a mathematical analyst.
analyst, yes. I don't even know what that
means
means.
she's really smart. That's what it means.
She got a double major in math and economics with a minor in statistics and data sciences.
Yeah, she's into numbers and crunch. You know, when you say, I'm going to take this back and crunch the numbers, that means you give it to her.
Yeah.
Number cruncher.
Yes. Yeah.
But anyway, when you think about it, I mean, here's an orphan girl from Nicaragua. Well, I know we've told the story before, but still, I mean, she gets a scholarship via the internet to go to high school in Germany because she's in a third world country. Is all this story true so far?
Yes.
So
Feel free to correct.
she gets, her grandma raised her up until she was a teenager, and then her grandma died. And so now she has nobody. I mean, there was a family from the church that just did what they could.
Her pastor was her mentor.
help
Yeah.
And then we knew him.
Yes, a
Because of
statement.
One
Yes.
Kingdom,
So
right?
she's coming through. We get some false information about she needs some help because they described her as, I think, a 24-year-old.
Well, it was Ben and Melissa. Ben said,
Here we go.
yeah. So Ben calls me and says, we're moving where we would keep her. But, because of the unrest of what happened in 2018 in Nicaragua, she can't get back in her country. That's a whole other story. But she needs like a month somewhere to live in the States.
She was in between high school in Germany
Right.
and college
And she had gotten her-
in Minnesota.
Right. She had gotten her scholarship to a college in Minnesota. And so she just needed somewhere to crash. But Ben said she's 24. You've met her before. She translated for you in the Dominican a few times. I was like, oh, I'm sure I'll recognize her when I see her. And in walks this tiny little girl that I've never seen before. And
She
I
was
was
like 16.
she was 18
18.
because she graduated high
I
school.
don't think that's right. She was younger than that.
Here we go.
All right, 16 to 18. We'll agree to disagree.
She's
That's about a
22
two.
right now, so -4 is 18. The last I can do that math. So at
You crunched that
18
quite well.
Thank you. So she was 18, came in, and I was like, I just don't recognize her at all. So, but the more we started talking and learning, Ben had this complete. I had stuck her out there in the guest house by herself. She was scared to death all night, couldn't sleep, cried.
Can
and
you
I just,
imagine coming to Louisiana? You've never been to America, and you see me, here around the corner, and welcome.
yeah,
And she, at that time, she knew the English language, but didn't
Not
know
well.
Louisiana language. Because I realized something in in less than a month. I realized that 90% of what I say or said to her was an idiom, which means she don't understand what I'm saying. I mean, everything I would say. I mean, I've gotten better at doing that around her now because
she's
like,
learned. She's learned a lot of them because I'll say something, I go, "Oh, that's an idiom." She says, "I know what that means."
Yeah.
So she's learned a lot. I didn't realize how much we spoke in those phrases, but once we got to know her story, we moved her in the house. Like, you don't need to be out there by yourself, and she just became our family. And I'm going to say the last night, Mia and I just left her there this past weekend because we got her in our hotel. We just kind of had a fun weekend. We were helping get her apartment, just started, really, mattress and some thrift things and some groceries.
Well, you skipped the part. She
And-
graduates college and then
Graduated
gets a
college
job.
and gets this job in D.C. So, but the last night we were there, it was really emotional. Like she was really emotional. And she was a little apprehensive and scared. And I thought, she's lived for 4 years off and on in a northern state, which is very different from Louisiana, very different culturally. And she did well. I mean, I didn't realize how different until I went and spent that weekend during her graduation, how different northern people are from us. They just are.
Yeah.
And so she did really, really well. And I have no question that she's going to do well in this job because she's a hard worker, obviously, and she does things well. And so she was just really sad. And at dinner that night, she just had a little speech for Mia and me, and it brought tears to my eyes. She cried. She was just so grateful. She said, "I know now that you're my family and that if anything happens to me, you'll be there for me. I can depend on you and I can lean on you. And you don't know what that means to me because I don't have anyone else."
Yeah.
And I was like, oh boy, like that was really emotional. And then she just cried and cried and cried when she got in the Uber to go back to her apartment. And I thought, this is not goodbye forever. We'll see you,
Well,
But
in
she
a few
also
weeks,
knows
but
it's limited now because
it's a big, scary world too.
right, it is.
But I mean, look at her life. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Just you talking about some courage. I mean, she's helped us way more than we've helped her because she's real particular about not wanting to, take anything unless she feels like she earned it or worked or did something. I mean, it's just she's a woman of high character. But I mean, she doesn't make sense in our world because she, when you say 2 + 2 = 4, I mean, she came from nothing. She had nothing. But I'm like, don't ever underestimate the power of a relationship with God because that's the one thing she did have. And they, this family, her pastor, I mean, they poured Jesus into her.
Yep.
And that was the strength she relied on. And I I mean, it's just a pretty incredible story. I mean, which the one thing I helped her with, because she did a few interviews and she didn't get hired, and I was like, "What are you saying to these people when they?" Because I thought, why wouldn't she get hired? I mean, this girl is. She talking about inspiration. Well, when she went through the process, she was not telling her anything personal.
Yeah.
And because she didn't want to brag on herself.
She's very guarded
in
her life.
I said, let me tell you this. I said, when they ask you the question, I said, you need to tell your story. It's incredible.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, but I'm not sure I want to do that. But anyway, long story short, she went and wrote it down. We read it, got teary-eyed about it. I mean, it's awesome. And because it's basically like everything that's happened in your life has been a reason to quit, but you haven't.
But you're still, you
tell this person interviewing. I mean, like, I'm not sure what you want me to do, but I guarantee you, I'm not going to quit. And here's why. And so we convinced her, or maybe I did. I was real passionate about it. I was like, I know you don't feel comfortable about it, and you feel like you're bragging on yourself or whatever. I was like, but in America, people love these stories, and you want people working for you who are like this. So she went in and did it. When they said, tell us about yourself, she just told it. Hired.
Yeah.
Because that was the difference. I was like, people, your character matters.
That's right.
And when you have something sensational, like, what kind of high school kid goes off to another country and goes to high school by themselves?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you imagine? I just can't imagine. So, I wanted to tell that story because I think that's what kind of made it. She realized, you know what, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to use it for anything other than this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But, all these good characteristics I have, they came from God in this journey. And I'm going to use that to be successful in whatever I do.
Well, when we got back to the hotel room after putting her in the car, I mean, she literally, it was like a movie. It was like a little child was being taken away from their parents. She was just hanging on to our eyes, eye to eye. As we were standing in the hotel and the Uber was driving away, it was like until she could see us no more. And I looked at me, I was like, that was brutal. I was like, I know. So we went back upstairs and I just sent a group text to all the members of our family and just said, please text her something funny, something encouraging, something sweet. And I think everybody did. And so it made her feel
Well, the
better.
good thing is, let's take a break. So all you got to do is watch the news these days and find out that free speech, religious liberty, even our Second Amendment, all of our constitutional rights are sometimes under attack from different people. So one of the reasons we support the great company Patriot Mobile, and they support our podcast, is they build themselves as America's only Christian conservative cell phone provider. So they're one of the few companies that are fighting back sort of in the culture war that's going on. So we want you to check these guys out. They've got a plan that fits any budget. They have a great U.S. customer support team that's going to provide excellent customer service. They share your values. They support organizations that fight for the things that we fight for. And one of the things we love about them is they have a real heart for veterans and first responders, and so they get even better deals. So if you're interested in making the switch, go to patriotmobile.com/Phil. Or you can call 972-PATRIOT. You're going to get a free activation code with the offer code PHIL. And remember, veterans and first responders are going to save even more. So check them out, patriotmobile.com/Phil, or you can call them at 972-PATRIOT. That's patriotmobile.com/Phil, 972-PATRIOT. The good thing is, because of all of our business stuff, especially Lisa and I, we're in D.C. at least once a year. So I'm excited now that we'll be able to look her up
That
and
would
have
be
some
great.
time when we're together, because I think we're going next month. Well, I wanted to shift gears because last time you were on the podcast, you told us the story about the baby that you guys have been taking care of and a little bit about the back stance of that. So I know our audience has been curious. Jase brings it up every once in a while, but just kind of how that's going. What's it like being plus?
I don't even know what
plus
to call
50
it.
and
I have no
having
idea
a
what
baby?
to call it.
It's exhausting.
Zach can weigh in on this as well.
It's exhausting.
It is exhausting, emotional, volatile. the situation is still the same, excuse me, in his life. It's still the same, which is just the unknown. But he doesn't know that. All he knows is comfort and security and a schedule. And when it's time to eat, he has a bottle. And when it's time to nap, he has somewhere to sleep. And he is loved and played with and entertained probably more than any normal baby because so many people love him. And
Well, now Jep and Jessica moved back into our neighborhood, so you got
so Scylla, that's how I'm able to be here right now. Scylla is there.
Yeah.
Scylla is just a gift.
You got to have a good babysitter.
I'm telling you,
that's
I was
key.
like, when are y'all moving back? Because I need Scylla
But he's a
so I
good
can
kid,
stay
too.
sane.
He's a good baby.
It's funny though that one of the big complaints I've been reading about in the blogosphere about the Roe v. Wade decision, and everyone's like, oh, the church needs to step up now, take and participate in orphan care. And it's just funny. Like my experience has been like, I look at what you guys are doing. I look at our church and we have a small church, and me and Jill were adding up the other day, and almost half of our church is in some way involved in orphan care. And it's funny that people are like chastise the church. I mean, there's couples that are lined up waiting to
Yes.
adopt, and there's couples that are stepping into this space. I mean, it really is encouraging. I would encourage our audience if you hear that and you think, man, the church isn't doing their part. I don't know. My experience is I disagree with that. I think the church is ready to stand in the gap in this
I
area.
agree. If there were more babies available, there would be more holes in people's hearts to be filled because I get a text. He's 4.5 months old. I have gotten a text or two every week from someone that says, my children are not able to have babies. Can they adopt him? Or my friend, I know of a really good family. They're trying to help me, and they're also trying to help their friends and their family members. But God is in control of this, and that's what I keep being told to me and keep telling myself and praying about it because I'm a planner. I want everything. I want in my control, because that's what I feel like is necessary, and it makes me feel better about everything. But this is just another one of those experiences and circumstances where God knocks on my heart and says, I'm in control. Yeah. You have to 100% rely on me, and I'm going to take care of this situation.
Well, I appreciate Zach bringing up on the pro-life side because we talk about that a lot on the podcast. Is we all have different roles to play in this sort of cultural war that's going on about abortion, and obviously Roe v. Wade decision has now opened up a lot of people to talk about it again. Lisa and I are more on the front end of helping women make decision not to abort their babies. You guys are more on the back end of if they say yes, what do we do then? And so I think everybody can play a role across the spectrum. We have a large audience, so we have different gifts and abilities, just like we do in the church, to do different things. But we have to be engaged in some way. I think in this whole cultural deal that's going on. So I applaud you guys too, Zach and Jill, and what you guys have done, Jason, Missy, and others in our family. In terms of we have a lot of adopted children and a lot of kids like Karina or Rebecca that weren't really adopted, but they're part of our famay, which is a neat thing. What'd you say, Jason? The United Nations?
Yeah.
Yeah. They were just grafted in.
Yes.
But, I thought about that last podcast when we were talking about, moving on from the milk. But he made it because I'm around the baby a lot now. But I thought about that when he said, anyone who lives on milk, being still an infant, is not acquainted with the teaching about righteousness. And it just made me think about him. I mean, he's oblivious with the outside world and right and wrong and what's led to this. And he's just, it makes me think of that James 1 that says every good and perfect gift is from above. Of course, then right after that, he makes that same reference about giving us the ability to be born again.
Right.
And, a lot of the study in John 1 is that. So it's been encouraging to me just to, when you see life, I mean, when you see a baby from a distance, you're like, oh, cool. But, when you're living that process, it brings up all those old memories that we had when we had our kids. Because you don't realize how much you've forgotten. Speaking of, embellishing stories and remembering, because I'm like, oh, well, I remember this. I remember this. I remember this. And, but then you're just seeing this little life that all the little details that just immediately takes you back to the designer. And I mean, I'm looking at his toes, and I'm like, "Boy, this boy's got long toes." And but you're just looking at all the details of life in a real way. It's kind of sobering, and you're grateful. So
I took him to the doctor yesterday, and the doctor was just asking me a lot just for his normal checkup. He's well. He's been healthy this whole time, and thankfully, because she was saying some things, I'm like, I just have forgotten so much, since my kids were little, but thankfully, Maris is 2.5 months ahead of us. And so I'm looking now at my children to help guide me with this baby, which is a strange circumstance, really.
That's right.
yeah, it is.
But Brighton and I have communicated still a lot about what Maris is doing because I want to see.
So how is grandfather and mother and
Yeah, I was going to ask
That's
you.
what I'm saying. We're in a weird situation where I'm like, call Brighton and see, it's what are we doing here?
Yeah.
It's like the last time we were there, we both had babies. And,
Yeah, Brighton had one on each hip at one point because I was busy with somebody outside, and our baby had woken up from his nap, and I walked in, and Brighton had one on each in one in each arm, and Maris is not small.
I was going to say, she's a whopper.
Yeah.
Hang on, let's take another break.
I mean, I do think it's awkward because we're supposed to be grandparents now, but like I say, I mean, there's
enough love though.
Well, there's a responsibility as humans. I mean, going back to what Zach says, you can't go around and talk about the sanctity of life and not, when you have situations knock on your door. It wasn't like we went out and sought out this situation. It literally knocked on our door. Mm-hmm. I think you have to step up.
Well, I'm very grateful because, and along with y'all too, Zach and Jill have a community of support around you. Because when we were on vacation, we were with y'all, Zach, and he had a crew there, and they're fostering another baby as well. And so she wasn't with them, and we were able to leave our little baby at home with wonderful support systems so that we can spend that quality time with our family. And so it's a sacrifice, but yet I'm so grateful for our community because then I can say, I really need some one-on-one time with my grandbaby, right? Without another baby, And so, and I don't have to feel guilty about that because there's so many that love him and want him. And so I think we're very, very blessed, and so is he.
That's a way to participate in the care. I love that because not everybody's called or equipped to foster. And honestly, I don't even know if everyone's equipped to do it. Like I may be equipped in one season of life, but maybe not the next. Like if you come back to me in about 3 years and say you want to do that, I don't know. This might be
well, Zach. If you would have asked me, I would have picked this season of my life as the one that heck no,
Yeah.
We can't do this right now
because
I was going to say, I was wondering where she was going. I thought Betsy's getting real with it today.
Have you heard me ever say anything else before?
No, but that's the first
she
time.
had to drop the H-bomb.
So
she had a 2 to 4% chance to say
2 to 4% chance that you're going to tell somebody that I did say that.
You did give me a card for our anniversary this year that was interesting.
Oh my goodness.
First came marriage, and let's see, what's it?
Squirrel. What?
No, you gave me a card.
Anyway.
You gave me a card for our anniversary.
Okay, we're talking about this now.
First came kiss, then came marriage, and then you opened the card up, and it said, and all heck broke loose. But it didn't say heck. She did give me that
So
card.
I haven't said it, but I bought a card that had it in there.
I know, so I thought
it was funny. But because that's really true, what happened. But if somebody
Okay, moving on.
I'm going to get this out.
Get it out, Betsy.
If somebody would have come to me and said, someone had a baby and they want They want you to take care of him for the next year and a half of his life. How do you feel about that? I would say, oh, thank you so much. I'm so honored that you thought of me, but that's a big fat no. I can't do that. But that's not what happened. Somebody said she signed him over to you, and in a couple of weeks, she's going to be able to take him. So we thought we were doing this for 2 weeks, and then we were doing it for a month, and then we were doing it for 3 months, and now we're 4.5 months in, and it looks like we're going to have him possibly for another year. So I think that's how God works too, is that you say yes for the moment, and there's a bigger plan there. And then we just figure it out. Right. Because if they would have said, or the next 5 years or 10 years, I would have been like, there is no way that we can do this.
And it is yet to be seen when he grows into a young lad and then an adult. It remains to be seen who he'll be.
Right.
It may amaze you.
I have my mode of operandi is
Operandi.
operandi. Well, I'm pretty sure the sound man that time said he said operandi, but look it up. I'll check it out.
Oh boy.
But
Modus operandi.
no, I think it's operandi. But
I never heard of operandi.
Well, if you go to the opera,
Just some kind of
that's funny. Well, I mean, y'all get
how to
messy.
butcher the English language and get away with
Let
it.
me stick to what I know. If you read in
put in
Acts,
modus operandi. I said, did you mean modus operandi?
okay, I was wrong.
It's got an N. There's an N in
that
it.
2 to 4% memory. So look, from one man, in Paul's sermon, Acts 17, we read this a lot, but he made every nation of men that they should inhabit the whole earth. Well, this next phrase says he determines the time set for them and the exact places where they should live. So my view on it is God creates life. I mean, this was on purpose, for a purpose.
Yep.
And he determines the exact time for them and the exact place where they should live. God did this so that we would seek him and perhaps reach out for him. We're his offspring. But in the next chapter, when Paul was in Corinth and persecution arose, I'm combining these two facts. I'm taking it out of context. But when the Lord spoke to him in a vision, it says, I have many people in this city. And so when you combine those two things, from the situation we're in now, you see why we're doing this. I believe that everyone is created in the image of God, and I believe God has people in each city that are there to represent him. And so that was kind of that was just kind of my thought process.
Well, that's interesting. Let's take our last break. That's interesting, Jase, because not only in a you think about that in a birth situation, but what about a new birth? Because when Paul finally submitted to Christ on the road to Damascus when he was struck down, where did he go? Well, God had a guy. God had a guy waiting on him, and so there he was.
I mean, it's really difficult to. Well, I struggle with taking care of this baby and watching it like suck the energy out of Missy. I mean, because it is extremely exhausting. But without any clarity as to future, it's very difficult to.
Yeah, because you don't have an end date.
Manage that, and so people who have helped us, they struggle with that too. And I was like, oh, I guess that's the deal with this. This is the reason this is difficult. So I just decided one day. I think I announced it to you. I just said, you know what? I'm not gonna worry about it. And really, what helped me was when we were in Hebrews, and it said, today, as long as it's called today.
Yep.
And I thought, that's the way I'm going to approach this situation. Today, I'm going to trust God. I'm going to protect this kid, and I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm going to just, that's why we pour love and we pray over him and we sing, spiritual songs to him. And I can tell he's happy. I mean, he's enjoying it. And he's on a schedule. I mean, he sleeps all night. He's just in a nice, safe environment. But, I don't think you should allow yourself to venture past that or you start getting anxious, worried.
Well, that's the hard part.
Dreadful.
That's the
Well, it's
hard part,
hard.
I think, for a mom, a female, because we are made different. And I want to provide all of the things that I wanted to for my children. I want the cute clothes, and I want his room to be good, and fun and sweet. But then I think that's just dumb. I don't need to make him a nursery. What if we don't have him tomorrow? That would be a waste of time. And so I go back and forth, and even emotionally. So it took me a couple of days, even after we first got him, I thought, I'm not going to get attached to this baby because I'm not going to have him very long.
Yeah, I said the same thing. I think it's normal.
But then I'm like, I can't help it. He's just too adorable. I'm kissing all over him, and I'm singing to him, and I'm rocking to him because he's just precious. And so here we are at 4.5 months. I'm still, kind of battling, like, how close do I get to him and how do I not? Because we've bonded. There's no doubt about it. He looks to me from across the room when he hears my voice. He's looking for me. And so what helped me was when Jase and I got to the privilege to go to Pebble Beach a few weeks ago with some friends. Shannon, she just went through got her counseling degree. And so I was like, let me just throw these things at you, like, from my perspective, like, am I doing what am I doing right and wrong? And I told her some things, and she said, because I said, I'm so scared that he's going to bond with me, and then whatever happens to his future, he's going to be ripped from me, and that's going to tear him apart. I can handle it because I'm prepared for it. He's not prepared for it. And she said this, which was so eye-opening, and it just relaxed me so much, when she said, he cannot transfer what he does not have. So if he does not know what love is, if he does not know what a bond is with a mother, he cannot transfer that. But he can transfer what he does have. So bond with him, sing to him. It's already happened. He will be able to be healthy and transfer that to his mother or another mother when that time comes, and if that's supposed to happen. And that relaxed me so much, like I'm doing what I need to be doing for him.
That's really rich. And it made me think about, because on the next podcast, we're in Hebrews chapter 6, and there's a segment there where the Hebrew writer brings Abraham back up, talking about the context we were talking about. And he said something really interesting. He said, while he waited patiently for the promises of God, talking about Abraham. And it took me back to, when God called him out in Hebrews 12, it was 25 years later before he even knew where he was supposed to go, for real. I mean, so it was that long, 25 years, because he said, I'm going to send you to a place, and I'll tell you when you get there. And Abraham trusted him. And so I think about that.
Talking about patience.
That's what I'm saying. And I hear you guys talking about that. And then in its own microcosm is what you're experiencing. You took a leap of faith, and now you're waiting patiently for God to do what he's going to do in the situation. So, I mean, that's what it is. It's
and they've medically, it's, proven by how your brains develop. I forgot all the details and all that, but I remember that 1 to 3 months, the first 3 months, the importance of that. I remember that when we were learning that about how the brain forms and all.
With Casey.
That's what Ben was talking about the other day.
Yeah.
So when I looked at that, though, and I don't remember the exact, I know that
it's very
those
young.
first few months is pretty critical. So, I mean, you don't think, they're like, well, he won't remember anything, and he won't, you're keeping the kid safe.
Yeah.
And
why it develops
on a schedule.
Well, there's a lot of formation. There's a lot of formation going on in those early times. I love it. That's brilliant that you can't transfer what you don't have, and because we've thought about. I mean, I think anyone that gets into foster care of any sort, those are the fears, right? And like you said, it's not even for your own self. I mean, you're like, I'm an adult, I can deal with this, but to think about a young child, having that type of separation, and I just tell Jill, like, God redeems. He can redeem all situations, and whatever happens, that this time that we have with the child is we have to trust that God's doing something, and the kid will be better off. But when you said that, I was thinking about my own life, and we went through my family went through a little bit of trauma a few years ago with some relationships with close friends that I'll spare you the details of the story, but it was very, very painful for us. And so once we came out of that whole dynamic, I was like, man, I'm not getting back into like those kind of, like, I'm not getting into friendship again because I was hurt. And now God has healed that, and we have developed a really good community here. But imagine if you didn't even have a context at all for any healthy friendship. I mean, there would be a wall up that so I think what you're offering when you're in, like, even in these young kids, is you're offering a foundation, something there that they can not just transfer, but even if it's bad when they go somewhere else, at least there's something there for them to hang on to and to go back to, a reference point of what real connection and intimacy and love looks like. And that's kind of how Jill and I and our family tries to approach it, as well.
Yes, I think that's it's very important to me. I've held on to that. It's helped me. I know that Jase has witnessed I've had a couple of meltdowns just because it is very emotional.
I wasn't going to bring that up.
I don't mind saying it because I am exhausted. I'm exhausted. And then when I look and I don't have any sense of what the future does look like, and I think I'm too old for this, I can't do this, it all comes tumbling down. And one night, Jase, I'm going to tell the story because of what Mamaw Shaq said, because we were telling this the next night to Mamaw Shaq down the street. We were strolling him, and I said, I had a little bit of a meltdown last night.
Yeah, I was shocked because they had their whole family there, and so it was like 20 people.
It was like Mamaw Joe and her brother and his wife, and I think Chris and Johnny were there, and we were just kind of telling him, I said, I know, I just got emotional last night, thinking I just can't do this, and Jase was trying to encourage me, and he said, just think about Mary. Just think about Mary raising Jesus. I mean, she was pregnant. She wasn't married. She was young. And I looked at him and I was like, you're comparing me to Mary? And I said, I am not raising the Savior of the world. And it just kind of came out like that. And I was telling Mamaw Joe that, and Jase was standing there that night, and Mamaw Joe looked at Jase and she said, Jason, you did not say that to her. And I said, yes, ma'am, he did. And she said, did you throw something at him? And I just thought that was so, she's 90. Yeah. She put her hand on her hip,
She is a sharp 90 though.
She is very sharp.
I think I had a pretty good point there.
Well, apparently it thudded with the lady. Yeah. All right, so we're out of time. Missy, it's always a pleasure to have you on Unashamed, mainly just to make Jase uncomfortable.
Sorry,
but
babe.
A couple of things I didn't get to, I want to talk about in the overtime. One is about the new show. I want to get your take on it. And something we talked about marriage recently, I want to ask you about as well. So blazetv.com/unashamed if you want to catch the rest of our segment with Missy. We'll see
marriage
you in the overtime.
tips, babe.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going there?
We're going
I
there.
don't know.
Oh, boy.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.